The URC quarterfinals have concluded, and what a weekend of rugby it was. Absolute madness across the board. I was actually at the Sharks versus Munster game, which we will be covering in this video. We'll be covering Bulls versus Edinburgh, Glasgow versus Stormers, and Leinster versus Scarlets, and also how they stack up in the semi-finals and who we could potentially be seeing in the final of the URC. If you haven't, please hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. Leave this video a like, and as always, drop your opinions down in the comments, because I know that there's going to be a lot of opinions on these games, some good, some bad, but let's dive into it. First up, Friday night's game, Glasgow taking on the Stormers. Now, I think a lot of the sentiment around this game before kickoff was that the Stormers did have a chance, but I did think Glasgow were favourites, and a lot of people agreed that Glasgow were favourites. I mean, they're the defending champions. They beat the Bulls at Loftus last year to win it. But if there was a team that was going to travel to Scotland and beat the Glasgow Warriors, it was the Stormers. Now, unfortunately, they didn't have Damian Willemse available for selection because of the ban, which meant that a lot of the pressure was going to fall on Sasha as well as Marnie Lebok to sort of orchestrate that game, drive it forward, get them over the gain line, look up, put kicks in behind. And a lot of that pressure fell to Sasha. And as much as I love Sasha, I love him as a player, I do think he is the future of the Springboks. If we're being honest, he just didn't have a good game. It felt like the pressure got to him. He wasn't as fluid as he normally is. He's normally a very, very confident rugby player, but something just seemed a little bit off on Friday night against the Glasgow Warriors, and ultimately I think that led to the Stormers not being able to sort of stay in the game. There's not many Stormers players that had a great game, and yes, they only lost 36-18, and I think it was a much tighter affair than what the scoreline represents. But the Stormers let themselves down there. I mean, a couple of the guys didn't step up. And on the other side of the coin, the Glasgow players definitely stepped up. I mean, the Stormers, they had scrum dominance, but they failed to capitalize on that and really push Glasgow back. Their lineouts and set pieces were a little bit shaky, and that has to do a lot with injuries and substitutions. Handling errors and defensive laps were also a problem for the Stormers against the Glasgow Warriors. But you did have a player like Sabelo Senatla who really stood out. I mean, I think he was definitely the player of the game for the Stormers. And I think the Stormers are going to have a long, hard look at themselves and really have a tough conversation, because we need to start asking the question, are they real contenders next season in the URC? Are they the Stormers of 2022 that can make it all the way to a final and win it? I think they've got a lot of things to sort out. They have the players to do it. They have a solid forward pack. They probably have one of the most electric backlines in all of rugby at the moment, but they just didn't seem to put those two things together and match them well. And I think a lot of that, unfortunately, came down to Sasha not having a great game. It happens. It happens to the best of us. He is still super young, and unfortunately, he's not going to be able to play to his 100% potential every single game. But I do think you have to give credit where credit is due, and Glasgow do look like a team that could go all the way yet again. They didn't have the greatest of group stages or round robin stage, but when it comes to knockout rugby, when they're playing at home, they are a very, very dangerous side. Now, Glasgow will be taking on Leinster next week, and I think from a South African point of view, that is probably the best team to take on Leinster away from home, because they're in Scotland. It's not a long trip to Dublin for them to go play against Leinster, where if the likes of a Sharks, Bulls or Stormers had to go and play against Leinster away from home. I know the Bulls have beaten them in a semi-final away from home, but it's a lot more difficult for South African side to do it. So I think that's probably it is one of the biggest games, because there's only two games, but I would argue that that is a bigger game in a South African context than the Bulls versus Sharks game, because one of those South African teams are going to make it to the final. But I think if a South African team has to fly over and play Leinster in Dublin, it's going to be a whole lot more difficult than hosting a home final against the Glasgow Warriors. Do I think Glasgow can knock over Leinster? I do think. I think they have the best opportunity out of anyone in the URC, and I'm going to get onto the Leinster game, but Leinster are not looking as great as they should be looking at this stage in the competition. Then we move on to the second game of the weekend, and that was the Blue Bulls taking on Edinburgh. Now, again, I said it in my preview that this was going to be a tight game. It's always a tight affair when the Bulls take on Edinburgh, no matter if they're playing home or away. And Edinburgh started out like a house on fire. The Bulls were down 21-8 in the first half, and as a South African supporter, I didn't think that the Bulls would manage to get themselves back into the game. They didn't look great in that first half, but then sort of between the halves, at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, the Bulls turned it on. A crazy 20 minutes, scoring 5 unanswered tries. I mean, you look at guys like Cameron Hanekom, who again put his hand up for why he should be the Springbok number 8. You look at guys like Jan-Hendrik Wessels and Volkolo, who scrummed Edinburgh into oblivion. They were so good on the ball defensively, set piece time. The Bulls lineout was operating perfectly. Ruan Nokia's work rate and physicality was up there. So, I mean, you look at those 4 forwards, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Volkolo, Cameron Hanekom, and Ruan Nokia, and you can make a case for every single one of them and why they should be included in a Springbok starting 23. Ruan Nokia was probably the find of the season for the Springboks last year. He's now playing 7 for the Bulls, and he's doing an incredible job at that. So that's just going to add strings to his bow in terms of Springbok selection, that versatility. He can be sort of a Pieter-Steph du Toit-esque, play 7 as well as lock, which gives Rassie Erasmus a whole lot more options when it comes to selecting that Springbok side. You look at the back line. I mean, Keegan Johannes comes in after Johan Goosen has been injured. And to be honest, he had a good game. He had a very good game. He's a young fly-off. He's coming in under extreme pressure. And we saw in the Stormers game what can happen to a fly-off when there is this amount of pressure. But he stood up along with the likes of Willie Leroux, who's always creative, who's always going to bring you that BMT that maybe some other players don't. And the Bulls are going to be a very difficult team to beat at home. They had a great sort of 4-game run. Then they had a bye last week, and I think that bye kind of messed up their rhythm a little bit, and you saw it in the first half where they just couldn't get going. But once they found their rhythm, they looked unbeatable at times. The Bulls are going to be very difficult for the Sharks to knock over, and I would almost say the Bulls are probably one of the favorites, probably close to the top to win the whole URC at the moment. So a dominant performance from the Bulls, and I think we can expect a lot of Blue Bulls players to be selected for that Springbok squad come that Italian tour. Then we came up to the Leinster versus Scarlets game. Now, I think everyone except the Leinster supporter were hoping that the Scarlets could pull off a miracle and beat Leinster. They gave a damn good effort to beat that Leinster side. I mean, Scarlets finishing in 8th. The Welsh side, the Welsh teams haven't had a great season. Scarlets have been one of those standout Welsh sides. And going into halftime, 15-14 down, you're kind of looking at that game and saying, one bounce of the ball, one decision going Scarlets' way, and they could get the job done. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Leinster showing their class, winning 33-21. But you got to look at this Leinster side. Against a team like Scarlets, they should be putting 20, 30 points on them. But they just couldn't seem to get Scarlets off of their back. And I mean, if you look at that Leinster side, I'm not going to name all of them because it's basically the entire British and Irish Lions squad, as well as the whole Irish team. They should be winning this competition year in and year out. We see them stumble in the Champions Cup semi-final against Northampton. We almost saw them stumble against Scarlets. And now they come up against the defending champions in the Glasgow Warriors. And something's brewing there. Something's telling me that maybe Glasgow can go over there and beat Leinster. Now, yes, Leinster absolutely obliterated them. I think it was 52-0 in the Champions Cup. They then the Glasgow Warriors then did a little bit better in the URC game. But I think in knockout rugby, anything is possible. Anything can happen. If it's your day, it's your day. And I think for Leinster, they need to have a hard look in the mirror because that wasn't a great performance by them. Yes, they managed to win it, and they managed to win it by 12 points at the end of the day. Quite comfortable. But Scarlets scared them. Scarlets definitely scared them. And I think Leinster out of the competition is going to make it a whole lot easier for the rest of the teams that have to face them. Do I think Leinster are going to beat Glasgow? I think this is going to be such a tight game. I don't think Leinster are operating at 100%, and I don't think they're going to be operating at 100% against the Glasgow Warriors. Glasgow have nothing to lose. They come in to Dublin to beat Leinster. And I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to do it by a couple of points. And I think we're going to have we're going to have a URC final in South Africa, whether that's in Pretoria or Durban. Leinster might be the most unsuccessful rugby club in the world at the moment. I mean, they've got all the players. A lot of the blame has been forced onto Jacques Nienaber, whether that's because he's South African or not, whether it's his defensive system. We're going to have to wait and see. But if Leinster go on to win the URC, then I think that whole conversation is going to switch. Very, very interesting game, but not as interesting as the final game of the weekend. And then finally, we have the Sharks versus Munster game, where this is probably, I mean, I was there live. I watched this live. One of the craziest games of rugby I've ever witnessed in my life. I don't think I'll ever watch a rugby game that is going to be that tense, with that much drama coming out of it, with the Sharks coming out on top, the South African team coming out on top. I mean, you got to give credit to Munster. They might be one of the best teams at knockout rugby away from home. Last year, semi-final, final, quarter-final, semi-final, final. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. It was the year before. It was 2023, where they went on that away run, won the quarter-final, won the semis, won the final, ended up winning the URC. So you can never write off Munster. A lot of people were predicting Munster to beat the Sharks at home. Now, if we're going to be honest about the Sharks' performance, that first half by the Sharks was dismal. It was probably one of the worst halves of rugby they've played in a while, but somehow they managed to go into halftime 7-0 down. They then switched it on in that second half. They were getting a lot more go-forward ball. Andre Esterhuizen was a big part of that, carrying that up in the midfield, getting the boys over the gain line, and then they could spread it. Ethan Hooker had a phenomenal game, and it could not have come at a better time for him, given the fact that he's made the Springbok alignment camp, given the fact that we've got Italy coming up, we've got Barbarians, we've got Georgia. I think we could see Ethan Hooker in a Springbok jersey in the next month or so. And then the Sharks just continued scoring tries. Ethan Hooker got 1 or 2 tries. Apalele Fassi scored a try. But Munster were always in the game. Connor Murray slotting that crucial 3-pointer at the end to draw it up 24-24 at full time. We then go into extra time, and nothing happens in extra time. No one scores points. And then the most remarkable thing I've ever seen, a rugby penalty shootout. I was at the game, on the field, right behind the Sharks bench. And to see them bring on Bradley Davids with about 30 seconds left of extra time to come and kick. I mean, I think Bradley Davids is about 20 years old, maybe even younger. To bring him on with 30 seconds, he hasn't played in the last 2 games. They bring him on to kick. The amount of pressure that Bradley Davids was under to make sure that he slotted those kicks and did so was phenomenal. That guy has so much BMT. I'm so chuffed for the guy. But we can't speak about the Sharks Munster game without the Jaden Hendricks incident. Now, a lot of the Munster supporters are saying that Jaden faked that cramp. Rassie Rasmus has tweeted out a picture showing that he wasn't faking the cramp. You can see his calf muscle tensing up. For him then to give Crowley a little wink at the end, you've got a side of rugby viewers who don't like it and a side of rugby viewers who do like it. Look, I think this is the whole thing with rugby at the moment. Rugby are asking for stars. We're asking for a little bit of controversy to grow the sport. Everyone I've spoken to over the last couple of days, that's the only thing that they can talk about. Not even the fact that there was a rugby penalty shootout. The fact that Jaden Hendricks and Crowley had a bit of a go at each other. So yes, I don't mind it at all. It reminds me of Henry Pollock. We need these controversial moments to spice up conversation, to get people talking, because now even more people are going to watch the next Sharks game against the Bulls because of that incident. But for the Sharks to have pulled that off in the way they did, to stick in the fight, you could see how much it meant to the players. Some of them were crying. Fez was crying. Mchunu was tearing up. I mean, it means a lot to these guys after the URC season that they had last year. To be in a semi-final and go to Bulls country in Pretoria, I mean, it's the best thing that can happen for South African rugby. Now, who do I think is going to win between the Bulls and Sharks? Now, a lot of you guys know I'm a Bulls supporter. I do a lot of work with the Sharks. So I'm kind of split on this thing. But I think if you have to look at form, Bulls are definitely the favorites. But Sharks do have the team that can upset anyone on any day. It's going to be an absolute cracker. I'm definitely going to be watching it. I'm sure you guys are going to be watching it. But what a weekend of rugby. What a weekend of URC rugby. This is exactly what this competition needs. Massive games, tight score lines, some controversy, some drama. It's all good for rugby. I can't wait for the semi-finals. You guys let me know what you think down in the comments. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, leave this video a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.